In Privacy Watch, the Facebook hearings on Capitol Hill may be over, but the changes to the social media site are just beginning. A former employee for Cambridge Analytica faced British Parliament yesterday.
This comes as Europe is preparing for General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR, to go into effect next month. Facebook will comply with the regulation by rolling out new privacy changes. Now, that will begin this week in Europe and elsewhere in the coming weeks and months.
David McCabe is a technology reporter for Axios, and he covered Facebook's hearings last week, and he joins us now. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me on again.
So, David, Facebook has announced new privacy changes that will begin to be rolled out in Europe ahead of the General Data Protection Regulation, but will then continue to roll out everywhere else. So explain to us what these new changes are.
So effectively, it will make it possible and require users to basically review their privacy settings with regard to some sort of key sensitive areas, and in some cases be able to say, no, we don't want you to use that data, or I don't want you to have that data. So, for example, they'll be able to say whether or not Facebook can use data to target ads at them from partner sites. These are sites that have that like button that we all know from across the web. They'll be able to delete information on certain sensitive things like their religion, and this will all be sort of through a review process that they previewed yesterday. There are some screenshots online, and as you said, it'll start in Europe and then roll out around the world.
So here's the thing, though. Facebook is a site that connects people all around the world. So you're going to have perhaps some people in Europe on Facebook that are going to have certain privacy protections, and then other countries that won't. So how does that sort of impact people using this website as these changes roll out?
And right, so this is exactly the crux of the debate over GDPR and how it should apply around the world. Of course, the actual protections will only apply to the people under the jurisdiction of the European Commission who's propagated this rule. But it's not very easy for companies to have one set of rules and settings for a massive jurisdiction like Europe and then a different set of rules and settings in the United States. And that's why you're seeing Facebook, I think, roll this out worldwide, is that they understand that Europe may be leading on this, but it's sort of taking the rest of the world with it. But of course, the actual legal protections will only apply within the jurisdiction of GDPR, and the rest of the world will sort of rely on Facebook's voluntary commitment to some of these principles.
So just to sort of clarify, if I have a cousin that lives in England and, you know, we're Facebooking back and forth and sharing information about ourselves, does the fact that I'm sort of in a dialogue with her on Facebook blow up her privacy protection because here in the U.S. I don't have that?
You know, this is legally pretty complicated, but Europe has taken a pretty hard line in terms of the people under the jurisdiction of this rule having it apply to them. More of the debate has been around whether or not it should apply to you in the United States or someone else in a jurisdiction that doesn't have these legal rules going into effect.
Daniel, Facebook also says they've updated their terms of service and data policy to make it more clear for users. Does it do just that?
The changes that they rolled out to their terms of service, to their data policies, are about clarifying what they collect, how they use it. What they're not about is changing what they collect or how they use it. So it doesn't say they can collect more information. It also doesn't say they can collect less information. So it's really more of a cosmetic change to get them ready for sort of this privacy moment than it is a demonstrable change to the basis of their business model.
So going back to last week when Mark Zuckerberg testified on Capitol Hill, the CEO said that, you know, government regulation of the tech industry is probably inevitable. He actually said in another interview that he's sort of open to what that might look like. But let's just play a little bit of what he said on this privacy debate.
I think that it is inevitable that there will need to be some regulation. So my position is not that there should be no regulation, but I also think that you have to be careful about what regulation you put in place for a lot of the reasons that you're saying.
So could this be the beginning of the sort of regulation that he's suggesting?
I mean, I think GDPR is really the elephant in the room when he's making those statements, because it's already rolling towards coming into effect, and it's pretty sweeping. It's a pretty significant privacy law. He's staking out ground there that is not quite as drastic, right? Maybe we should change the way that the terms of service are regulated. There should be a simpler way to explain to users required about what their data is being collected. But he's not going as far as to say, you know, we are ready to endorse in the United States a GDPR-style rule.
So Meanwhile, Cambridge Analytica has been testifying before a British Parliament committee. What have we learned from all that?
You know, I think the Cambridge story is happening effectively in parallel to the Facebook story. And I think we're seeing the two companies tell sort of different stories. Cambridge has come out and said publicly in statements, you know, what Facebook is alleging is not totally accurate. But we've also seen Cambridge is not as willing to testify. We saw them pull out of some testimony that I believe is supposed to happen today. Their CEO, one of their chief executives, Alexander Nix, and so we have seen them be a little more hesitant to get out and testify, but the pressure is going to keep on them. Here in the United States, there's interest in holding a Cambridge Analytica hearing as well. So the pressure will continue to be on Cambridge, and of course, all of that drafts right back to Facebook, even though Facebook says, you know, we were deceived here. They're the bad actors, not us.
So Mark Zuckerberg was also invited to testify in Europe. Instead, I think he sent attorneys or sort of underlings. He faced similar pressure here in the United States, and we saw him testify before Congress. Could we see him maybe showing up in Europe to testify?
So he received another invitation in the last 7 days to testify in front of the European Parliament. He'd already been invited to testify in the UK. Facebook has been pretty resistant to sending him over there to the UK. I think they said basically we'll send some of his top lieutenants, but not him. And he reiterated that on a press call ahead of his testimony here. But certainly that is something that European lawmakers want. And it's not a question for Zuckerberg that's going away with GDPR coming into effect so soon.
David McCabe, thank you so much.
Thank you.